He has a longtime friend, Jim Scriven, an ace tennis player in his day. Here's another quick story about Ken.
With Reardon, it's funny, we didn't play together very much over the years. I remember one tournament, we played in Eastern Canadian one year, and we made the mistake that year of winning one match and then deciding to go over to the coffee shop for lunch and a couple of beers, and then we found out we had to play another match, which we had a lot of trouble with, so maybe that's why Ken and I didn't play together too much, because we were too much alike, I think.
That doesn't help the mental game either, does it, that sort of? When asked who influenced his career, here's what Ken has to say.
I'd have to say Lauren Main. I met Lauren many years ago, and we're both a similar age. He's just a kid.
Now, before leaving for Turkey, Ken wanted to pass along to you tonight these words of appreciation.
Thank you to the selection committee. They thought well enough of me and my tennis and to invite me into the Hall of Fame. I think that was very nice. It's something I've often thought of but never thought I would realize. There are a lot of players who deserve to get into the Hall of Fame who are probably better players than I am, but maybe they just aren't as dedicated.
You got to love the modesty, huh? What he has achieved in tennis from early years until today, and probably what he'll win this week and next year too, certainly, as you know, warrants induction. Ladies and gentlemen, to the Nova Scotia Sport Hall of Fame, Ken Reardon, Sr.
That was pretty nice, huh?
The plaque presenter is Blaise Landry, the sport consultant with the Nova Scotia Department of Health Promotion and Protection and the province's representative on the Nova Scotia Sport Hall of Fame Board of Directors. The pin presenter, Robert Cunningham, who played against and with Ken Reardon. You know, I think it says it all when an inductee can't make his own induction because he's nearly 80 and he's going to Turkey to play tennis. I don't know what else you need to say, but this guy's an amazing guy. Can you talk a bit about your dad's dedication to this sport in particular?
Well, I guess he raised 8 of us. Actually, my mother raised 8 of us, and he was an entrepreneur of his own, had his own family, his own company. He would come home. He'd leave early in the morning, go to work. He'd come home, have supper with us, maybe try to play a little tennis, and then at 12 or 1 o'clock at night, he'd be sitting at the kitchen table doing his work for his company. And so he was dedicated to everything. The family, he'd try to come home and see us. He'd try to get out and play tennis and relax a bit, but then he'd come back and go to work. He was just all around a dedicated person.
You know, I know he downplayed this in what he said there, but to win as much as he has to be a very competitive guy. Do you have a story about how he would dig deep when he had to?
Well, you mentioned that he was a slow starter, and Jim Scriven started to highlight why. But he would typically, the reason he would often start slow was because he'd wake up in the woods at Trafton Can's party, and in the morning that he had to play the semifinals. While Dave Peers was in bed at 9:30, my father was at the party and would wake up in the woods, and then he'd come to the game. He'd come right to the game from the woods, and he often took him an hour or so before he could get moving. So that was typical. And it was all the influence, of course, of Jim Scriven and Jerry Regan and those guys. So that was part of his game. And the funny part is now to see these guys at 80 years old run around in 32 degrees Celsius temperature, playing tennis for 3 and 4 hours at a time. you're just wondering when one of them's going to drop. But it's just, they're still doing it, and they still do it quite well. So.
Yeah, so he didn't subscribe then to the what we think of as the modern day training regimen, the night before sleep and such.
No, I'm not sure he didn't get much sleep, and spent he was known not so much for his competitiveness, but he was just fun to have around the tournaments. And a lot of these guys, the tournaments back then with Dave Peers and Jim Scriven and Bob Cunningham and the Power family and the Shakespeares, it was a really friendly atmosphere. You didn't have the 12-year-old kid with his father at the back of the fence saying, "Come on, get that scholarship." And you know, you had just people sitting around talking and occasionally having a few drinks, and they would just come to share each other's company. And that kind of camaraderie, he's fortunate that he now knows people all over the world like that. He's gone to many countries, and now he has friends all over the world that play tennis and invite them back, etc. And he's shared that for 50, 60 years or more. So it's been great.
Well, I know he's not here tonight, but I know when he watches the tape, he'll be thrilled with the stories you chose. Pass along sincere congratulations, and thank you very much for speaking so openly and honestly.
I do have one story. This really was destined to be, because some 30 or more years ago, this hotshot young quarterback from St. Mary's University, he came to my house with his friends. He played a little basketball, and he played a little tennis as well as football. And he asked if he could borrow one of my tennis rackets. And I said, "Geez, I got brand new rackets. I'm not going to give him one of mine." So I gave him one of my father's, right? My father, the next weekend, is looking for his tennis racket. And he's playing in the tournament. He lost. He comes back and said, "Geez, I don't know where my favorite tennis racket's gone. I don't know where it is." Anyway, I tried to get it back for about 15 years. It never came back. But finally, Bill Robinson took control of the Sport Hall of Fame. And Bill, we don't need the tennis racket anymore. This will do just fine. Thank you very much.
Beautiful, beautiful.